Hi Year Fives and welcome to Thursday's art lesson, and today we're going to be looking at using sketching techniques to draw in 3 dimensions. So a little link to maths here. First thing I want you to do is look at the 4 images on this page, and if you've got the PDF in front of you, I want you to look at the 3 images on the next page as well, and I want you to think about these questions. So which images look 3D to you? Remember 3D is 3-dimensional. And why do they look 3D to you? If you like, you could annotate, label some ideas about what it is that makes it look 3-dimensional. So pause the video now. Okay, so they're pretty cool pictures, aren't they? I pulled these ones off the internet because I thought that they were good examples showing 3 dimensions. So like, you know, this piece of paper here is crazy, isn't it? Because it looks like there's a hole in that piece of paper. But remember, this is just a piece of paper, just flat. So it's the techniques that the artists have used that have created that 3D effect, which is amazing. And then I have to show you this. Patricia Rosenthal, of course, is my mum, and she's an artist. But I've always been really sort of fond of my mum's art in terms of seeing the 3 dimensions. I think she's really skilled at showing 3-dimensional objects, and we'll explore kind of some of the techniques that she uses a bit later. So hopefully you picked out a few of these things, but I just want to go through some of the techniques. You probably annotated a few of these. So if you didn't, don't worry, you could maybe pause the video at various points and see if you can see any examples of the techniques that I'm talking about in the pictures in front of you. Because if you can spot those things, then you'll be able to recreate them and, you know, think about using them yourself. So a really good technique for creating 3D drawings, 3D sketches, is using different types of lines. So we've talked in maths about using diagonal lines that get closer together, or diagonal lines to show the depth of something. So you might have seen pictures like this, the train tracks picture, where we know that train tracks actually are parallel lines that never meet, but the artist has chosen to use diagonal lines to represent those train tracks, because then they do meet in the distance, and it gives that illusion that they're going back until you can't see them anymore. So artists break rules, okay? Things that normally were parallel can become diagonal and all meet at a point, and that creates that sense of depth. And we saw that in this picture here, didn't we, with the table? Another thing you can use is curved lines, because objects aren't all straight, are they? For instance, this shoe or these oil cans that my mum painted, you've got to use curved lines to show sort of that there's a back to those things, that they're not flat. And so using those curved lines can give a sense of the curve and the depth as well. And you can sketch in curves as well. So using sketching techniques, which we're going to look at a bit later. This kind of carries on. So using different directions with your pencil lines, okay? So these are great examples of where we've got some horizontal lines, this sort of cliff one and the hand one. We've got horizontal lines, but then to kind of show the depth of the actual object that's being drawn on those lines, the direction of the line changes. So here, we've got perpendicular lines to those horizontal lines because we've got vertical lines and vertical shading. And here, the line carries on horizontally, but then it bumps over the hand because, of course, the hand would be raised, wouldn't it? And then there's some nice use of shadows to just emphasize that. And my mum here has used different directions of sketching to create the sort of 3D image of the fabric. So she's used these diagonal lines here to show that strap coming round, but she's used sketching in the opposite direction here as a contrast. So you can be really creative with your use of line, whether you're sketching or actually drawing the outline. Okay, using overlaps is a good technique. So looking really carefully at what's being drawn as an artist and noticing where things overlap. Because when we're looking at objects, you've often got things in front of other things and things behind other things. And so like with this, this picture here, if this was some apples or some shapes, we can't actually see all of the second shape in the picture, the one that's just behind, because this is obviously a solid shape and that part of that shape is being obscured. So we've got to make sure that we only draw what we can see. We can't just put the rest of that circular shape in there, that sphere, because it's behind that other sphere. And you can see in compositions as well, if you want to create your own composition later, make sure you've got things sitting in front of other things overlapping, because that will create a sense of depth. Finally, shadows are really important for showing depth because 3D objects cast shadows. We've looked at that in science, haven't we? Especially 3D solid objects like these ones. And so, you know, you've got to think about the direction of the shadows, because if you look at these pictures here, whether it's the still life one or the oil cans, the shadows are all in the same direction with the objects, because that kind of shows where the light is coming from. Here, the light must be coming from in front of the objects and maybe slightly to the left rather than over here. And here again, it must be in front of the objects and slightly to the left, maybe more to the left, because all the shadows are going towards the right, aren't they? So you've got to think about shadows. Okay, cool. So we're going to do a little bit of guided practice now. I'm going to see if I can stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to see if I can show you some of this in a moment. But basically what I want you to do is go back through the pictures and the techniques that you've just seen, and I want you to just try some things out, be creative. So you could cut out a picture, you could see if you could recreate a drawing of it next to it using some of those sketching techniques like shadows and lines. Or you could cut out an image and you could label the image with the technique that's been used. Or you could just try your own things, you know, just look back through those techniques and see, be creative, think, what could I try here? And don't be afraid of making mistakes, because that's how we learn, okay? I'm just going to remove the pin from this, and I'm going to pin my display, my practice space. Hopefully you can see that. Hopefully it's still recording. So you can see I've got my paper sculpture ready, but let's do some guided practice first. So I've just chosen these two images. I'm trying to demonstrate things in a slightly different view this time, so I hope this works. So if I wanted to just have a little go at the overlapping in the shadows, I might try and recreate this curve. So just next to it, I'll try and sketch a circle. That's always a good technique as well. Remember to be quite freehand with your drawing. Hopefully you can see this. I might just move my light away slightly. Move it forward. There we go. So I've got that circular shape made up of lots of curves. And then I'm going to just sort of see where the shape of the circle, the sphere behind, touches it. I think it's about here. It's not halfway down the sphere, it's slightly above. So you've really got to look at where things connect. And then I'll carry on my circle just behind. And then that even smaller sphere is off in the distance, isn't it? Now I quite like the fact that this artist has put the line behind to show where things kind of end, because that can create a good sense of depth as well. Now they've used some sort of curved line shading here. So I'd try that as well, going round. And maybe I'll try and put the shadows in too, but maybe I'll use a different direction for my pencil. Yeah. You've really got to show the shadow dark at the bottom where it touches the surface that it's resting on. So try and change the direction of your lines. Okay, so hopefully you can kind of, if I turn that off, hopefully you can see what I'm going for here. Again, I might have a little bit of a practice here with some objects, thinking about shadows. I could always trace over just to get my hand used to that curve. You've got to kind of get used to swinging your fingers back and forward to get a straight curve motion. Okay, so just have some fun with some guided practice. Now, your independent practice is to look at your paper sculpture. You can see I've already started making a bit of a line drawing of mine. If you don't have a paper sculpture, don't worry, because on the PDF, there's an example of something else that you can try out. Okay, so if you've got your paper sculpture, you might want to pause the video and go and get it now. You might even want to pause the video and just do some more guided practice. So I'm going to turn my light back on, because I'll just show you that I've got my desk lamp there. And if you have a desk lamp, you might want to go and get it and just put it behind your paper sculpture, because then it will cast some lovely shadows, which will help you get more of a 3D effect. Now, you can see that I started drawing this, but what I did first is I sort of had my sculpture in front of me and I rotated it, and I thought, what would be the best view for me to draw, given the shadows that are there? And remember that you don't have to draw all of your sculpture. And I thought, actually, because I get this nice overlap here, I thought this would be a nice thing to draw. So I'm just going to focus on this kind of section here. I'm not going to worry too much about what's over here. Equally though, yesterday when I was thinking about this, I thought actually it might be nice to have this on the diagonal, because then this square face, I can use those diagonal lines going backwards. And I've got this nice overlap here that I could draw. So there's a few things. You might even want to do a few sketches. Okay, so if I just move that back slightly, I'll attempt to do some different techniques. So I started creating an outline drawing just of the different parts, and I would recommend that that's where you start too, okay? So you can see that I started with just drawing the shape of that square face, and actually I might just change that slightly because I don't think that that was going in the right direction there. So don't worry if you need to just adjust a shape. Now, when you're drawing overlaps, it's really important that you kind of think about where things overlap, because I don't want to come any further down with my square. I don't want to put that bottom edge in yet, because I've got this lovely curved shape in front of it. So I'm going to see if I can just put that in now. So I'm going to need to use my curved line. Now I can see that actually we've got a bit of a bump there, haven't we, where that other piece overlaps. So I'm just going to use small lines. I'm going to keep looking all the time at what I'm drawing. Keep looking at the directions of the lines. And if I make a mistake, I can just sort of put a new line in, change where it is. Doesn't matter if it's not exact. Okay. Diagonal line going back, and then that kind of comes behind, doesn't it? I need to adjust that slightly. Okay. Sorry that this is taking a little while, but you can't rush a piece of art. Okay, so hopefully you can see that overlap. Now I can finish off putting this shadowed part here in, this part here. I can think about where that line carries on underneath the curve that I've just drawn. And then I can start thinking about the shadows. So I've got a kind of lighter part here, haven't I? Just put that in with some vertical lines. And then maybe I'll change the direction of my lines and use some horizontal darker lines to show that darker part. Now, if you've got sketching pencils, then you can try out your different sketching pencils. I'm just using a HB to show you that this is possible with just an HB. It's quite dark just above, so I'm going to carry on that horizontal line just above. I'm going to make it come across because it's dark at this side as well, isn't it? And if I think about where my dark lines are, it will hopefully make the curve stand out even more. Okay, so I might want to do the rest of the shading here. Not at the best angle for shading, because I have the camera in front of me. So I'm just feathering my lines across, and then as I get to the edge, I'm just going a bit slower, pressing at the same, pressing the same sort of weight to try and get the same kind of shadow line. I might change direction now, because I think it gets darker as it gets towards the top, doesn't it? So really think about how hard you're pressing. Okay. Now there's this other slightly lighter part behind, so I'm going to use horizontal strokes, just fill in some of that shadow. And then maybe vertical here to show the different direction of that piece underneath. Okay, hopefully you can kind of see where I'm going here. I might use some curved lines to show the curve that this curve actually gets, I want it to get darker here where it meets this piece, because this piece is lighter, isn't it? So I'm going to use some curved dark lines coming out there. And then I'm going to use a completely different direction line here to show that dark shadow going in that direction. Now the light is picking up on my lead here. So what I might do is I might just turn my light off in a moment and show you my drawing so you can kind of see what I was doing. I might then go up and sort of continue developing various parts, but I don't want to spend ages showing you a drawing. Okay, so hopefully you can kind of see what I was going for here. And you can just keep refining it, keep going back and adding in places where it was darker, places where it was lighter. Really use those shadows to get a sense of the different depths. Okay, hopefully you can see what I was going for. So I'll just show you on, if I remove the pin here and I put the pin back in, and then I show my screen again, to show you the task if you didn't want to do your paper sculpture. So you can see here that I've given you a kind of step-by-step still life, and these techniques, again, you can think about using in your paper sculpture if you want to. So choose up to 3 objects. Artists like to create groups of objects in 3s because you can overlap things in 3s nicely. So start by playing around with an interesting composition. Okay, then think about just creating an outline, just the outlines of the shapes. And then you want to erase any overlapping lines so you can see that they've rubbed out the lines that kind of went behind. Okay, and then begin to look at where the lightest and darkest parts are, like I did with my drawing, and shade those in, but then continue working into the drawing. So make sure the darkest parts are even darker, and check the shadows too. And take your time, okay? A good drawing shouldn't be rushed. It'd be great to see what you come up with. Please send your drawings into Year 5 email, okay? And I think it'll be something different for art next week. Have a great weekend, everyone, when you get there, and I'll see you next time. Bye.